My name is Princess Noor al-Hadid, and I was tied to a railway track by my own husband because I could not give him children. He believed the problem was me. He believed my body had failed him, and so he decided I should die. I was 25 years old when my life was supposed to end on cold iron rails in the middle of the Saudi desert. I was born into nobility, born in palaces, surrounded by wealth that most people only see in dreams. But none of that saved me when my worth was reduced to one thing: my womb. In my world, a woman is not measured by her heart, not by her loyalty, not by her love. She is measured by the children she produces. When I married my husband, one of the wealthiest royal men in the kingdom, he expected a dynasty, a legacy of sons, a bloodline that would rule long after his death. I was chosen to be the woman who would give him that future. But month after month, year after year, I did not conceive. The doctors said nothing was wrong. The specialists found no illness. The tests showed no failure. But in Saudi Arabia, a man is never infertile. A king is never weak. A royal bloodline is never questioned. So, the blame became mine. They said I was cursed. They said I was defective. They said I brought shame to his name. My husband stopped calling me his wife. He started calling me his mistake. And one night, he decided that mistakes should be erased. He told me we were going on a drive. Instead, he took me to the desert, to a place where trains pass at full speed, to a place where no one would hear me scream, to a place where my life could disappear without trace. They dragged me from the car. They bound my wrists. They forced my body onto the tracks. And then my husband looked down at me and said, "If you cannot give me sons, you do not deserve to live." Then he left. He left me there, waiting for the sound of death on iron. The desert went silent after they drove away. No engines, no voices, no footsteps. Just the wind moving across the sand, and the faint vibration of rails beneath my spine. My arms burned where the rope cut into my skin. My wrists were tied so tight I could no longer feel my hands. The metal below me was cold, even though the desert wind was still warm from the day. Every breath felt heavy. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. I tried to move. I could not. I tried to scream. My throat was dry. My voice cracked into nothing. Above me, the sky was turning deep blue. The first stars were appearing. Somewhere far away, I could hear the distant call to prayer drifting from a village beyond the dunes. All my life, I had prayed 5 times a day. I had fasted. I had worn hijab. I had memorized the verses. But lying on those tracks, waiting to be crushed, none of those prayers saved me. I remembered my childhood. I remembered my mother braiding my hair in the morning. I remembered the gardens inside our palace where the fountains sang alone at night. I remembered the girl I used to be who believed that love was real and that marriage was protection. Tears rolled down the sides of my face and disappeared into the sand. So this is how it ends, I thought. Not in a palace, not surrounded by servants, not in a hospital bed, but alone, tied like an animal, waiting for a train. The ground began to tremble. At first, I thought it was my heartbeat, but then I felt it again. A deep vibration traveling through the iron. A train was coming. Far away, I heard the sound, long, low, unstoppable. Panic flooded my body. I pulled against the ropes until my skin tore. I thrashed with every bit of strength I had left. I screamed into the empty desert. No one came. The train horn sounded again, closer now. The vibration grew stronger. The tracks sang beneath my back. I could feel the weight of the machine rushing toward me from miles away. I closed my eyes. I did not want to see my death. In that moment, I did not cry out to Allah. I did not recite verses. I did not ask for forgiveness. I screamed the only prayer my soul could still form. God, if you are real, please save me. The wind stopped suddenly. The desert went silent, and then the air around me changed. It grew heavy, not with fear, but with something I had never felt before. A presence, a power, a warmth that wrapped around me like invisible arms. I opened my eyes. Light filled the desert. Not the light of the moon, not the light of a car, not the light of fire. This light was alive. It surrounded me. It covered the tracks. It shone brighter than the stars. It did not hurt my eyes, even though it was blinding. And then I saw him. A man stood beside the tracks. His feet touched the sand, but he left no footprints. His robes moved in the wind, but the wind did not touch him. His face was strong and gentle at the same time. His eyes looked into mine as if he had known me forever. The train horn sounded again, but he did not turn. He only looked at me. "Do not be afraid," he said. His voice was calm, steady, filled with authority. I knew who he was, even though I had never read the Bible, even though I had never entered a church, even though I had never spoken his name before. My heart knew. "Jesus," I whispered. He knelt beside me. The light followed him. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath. "I see your tears," he said. "I heard every prayer you cried in the dark. I know what they did to you, and I have come to give you life." The train was seconds away now. The horn screamed through the night. The tracks shook violently beneath me. Jesus placed his hand on the ropes around my wrists. They fell away, not cut, not loosened. They simply turned to dust. My arms were free. I gasped and rolled off the tracks just as the train roared past. The wind tore at my clothes. The wheels screamed against the iron where my body had been only moments before. The desert exploded with noise. And then silence again. The train disappeared into the distance. The tracks were empty. I was alive. I was on the sand, trembling, sobbing, unable to breathe. Jesus stood over me. "You are not worthless," he said. "You are not cursed. You are not useless." He reached down and lifted me to my feet. "You are mine." The light faded slowly. The desert returned. The stars remained, but he was gone. Only the wind moved through the sand. And I knew with every part of my soul, my life no longer belonged to a prince. It belonged to Christ. They found me at sunrise. Not my husband. Not the guards who tied me. But a worker from a nearby station who had seen movement near the tracks. I was sitting in the sand, still trembling, my hands covered in dust, my dress torn, my eyes swollen from crying. When they asked what happened, I could not speak. My mouth opened, but no words came. Because how do you explain that a man made of light stepped between you and death? They took me back to the palace. When I arrived, my husband was already waiting. His face was calm. Too calm. He dismissed the guards and closed the doors. "You survived," he said. Not as a question, not with relief, but with irritation. I said nothing. He walked around me slowly, studying my bruises, the cuts on my ankles, the dust in my hair. "You embarrassed me," he said. "You failed even to die properly." That was the moment I understood something. He never loved me, not even once. To him, I was not a wife. I was an investment that did not produce returns. From that day, the palace became my prison. I was watched constantly. My phone was taken, my movements were recorded, my meals were inspected. They were not protecting me anymore. They were guarding a liability. But something had changed inside me. Something they could not see. Something they could not control. Jesus had saved my life. And now I wanted to know him. I wanted to know the man who stepped into death for me. The man who called me his. The man who saw worth in me when no one else did. I began to search in secret. Late at night, after the palace slept, I would use the computer in the library. I would type his name, Jesus. I would read stories about him, about miracles, about love, about grace, about a God who did not demand perfection but offered forgiveness. It was nothing like what I had been taught. In Islam, I learned that Jesus was only a prophet, a messenger, a man. But the more I read, the more I realized he was so much more. He was the Son of God. He was the Savior. He was the one who died so that I could live. One night I found a website that offered a free Bible. I hesitated. If they found it, I would be killed. Not just punished, killed. But I needed it. I needed his words. I needed to know him more. So I ordered it. And I waited. 2 weeks later, a package arrived. It was addressed to the palace, marked as a book of poetry. I opened it in my room with shaking hands. Inside was a Bible, small, thin, with a leather cover. I held it against my chest and wept. This was the book that would change everything. This was the book that held life. I read it every night, hiding it under my pillow, inside my wardrobe, behind the curtains, anywhere they would not look. I read about women who were abandoned and then chosen. I read about lives that were broken and then restored. I read about a God who touched lepers and defended prostitutes. A God who chose women when men cast them aside. Every page felt like it was written for me. I started to memorize verses, knowing the book could be taken from me at any moment. I wrote scriptures on small pieces of paper and hid them inside my jewelry box. I carried his words with me like armor. But fear walked beside my faith, because in Saudi Arabia, a woman who follows Jesus does not go to prison. She disappears. One night I was praying when I heard the lock on my door move. I froze. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would give me away. I hid the Bible under my mattress and sat down just as the door opened. 2 female guards entered. "We are searching your room," one said. They began opening drawers, checking closets, looking under the bed. I sat still, my hands folded, my breathing slow. They lifted the mattress. My heart stopped, but they did not look inside the lining. They were searching for phones, letters, evidence of communication. They found nothing. When they left, my knees buckled beneath me. I fell to the floor and pressed my face to the carpet. "Jesus," I whispered, "if you are with me, please protect me." And I felt it. A calm that did not belong to fear. A peace that did not come from safety. A presence. I was not alone. Days passed. The pressure grew. My husband demanded progress. He demanded results. His patience was running out. "You have shamed me long enough," he said one night. "God will not bless a disobedient woman." I wanted to scream that I was not disobedient. I was faithful. Faithful to the man who saved my life. Faithful to God. But I could not say it. Not yet. Not there. Not in that palace. Not in that country. Not where my faith could cost me my life. So I prayed harder. I read more. I memorized more verses. And I waited. Waited for the moment when I would be free. Free to speak his name. Free to live without fear. Free to follow the man who called me his own. One evening, my mother-in-law came to visit. She sat across from me on the velvet sofa, her face carved from stone. "You are wasting my son's future," she said. "A man without sons is nothing. You were brought into this family for one reason." Her words were calm, but her eyes were merciless. One afternoon, I was summoned to a family council. My husband sat at the head of the table. His brothers, uncles, and lawyers surrounded him. I stood alone. They spoke about me as if I were not there. "She has had enough time. He needs a younger wife. The family cannot wait any longer. This embarrassment must be resolved." Resolved. As if I were a contract dispute. As if I were a broken machine. As if I were not a human being. My husband finally looked at me. "You have 1 year," he said. 1 year to prove your worth. No one asked what would happen if I failed. We all knew. In our world, worthless women disappear. Sometimes they are sent to remote compounds. Sometimes they are locked in private villas. Sometimes they die in accidents. And sometimes they are tied to railway tracks. At night, I lay awake, listening to the palace breathe, the hum of generators, the footsteps of guards, the distant sound of traffic beyond the walls. I pressed my hand against my stomach and whispered, "Please, just one child." But my prayers were no longer directed to the God of my childhood. They were directed to the man who saved me, Jesus. I heard his words again and again. Ask, and it will be given to you. Nothing is impossible with God. Whoever believes in me will live. I did not know how faith worked. I did not know how miracles happened, but I believed he was listening. And that belief was dangerous. Because if they discovered my Bible, if they heard me speak his name, if they knew my heart belonged to Christ, my death would be legal. My execution would be justified. My family would call it honor. My husband would call it necessity. And my country would call it justice. I was walking a line between two worlds. One built on fear, one built on grace. And I knew eventually I would be forced to choose. Faith is dangerous in a palace, especially when that faith does not belong to the religion of the kingdom. Every camera, every guard, every servant, they are all eyes, and eyes report. After finding the Bible, I lived in two worlds at the same time. By day, I was Princess Noor al-Hadid, the obedient wife, the silent woman, the royal possession who bowed her head and followed orders. By night, I became someone else, a seeker, a believer, a woman who whispered prayers into the darkness. I learned to hear footsteps in the corridor, to recognize the sound of each guard's shoes, to memorize their shift changes, to hide the Bible inside the lining of my mattress where no one would think to look. Every night, I knelt on my prayer mat, but I no longer faced Mecca. I faced the window, the sky, the same stars that watched Jesus step between me and death. I whispered his name, Jesus. The word felt forbidden on my tongue, but it felt alive. I prayed without formulas, without memorized lines, without fear of saying the wrong thing. I spoke to him like a daughter speaks to a father. I am afraid. They want to replace me. They want to erase me. Forgive me. Please do not let me die like this. Sometimes I prayed for hours. Sometimes I only had the strength to say one word: help. I read the Gospels slowly, carefully, like someone learning a new language of the soul. I read about women who were barren and then conceived. I read about lives that were ruined and then restored. I read about a God who touched lepers and defended prostitutes. A God who chose women when men abandoned them. Every page felt like it was written for me. I need to pause my story for a moment and ask you something. Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach during prayer? That silent question that terrifies you? What if all of this is not true? I remember how alone I felt in those moments, believing I was the only one with these forbidden thoughts. If you are feeling this way right now, I want you to know something. You are not alone. There are thousands watching this who understand exactly what you are experiencing. The fear, the confusion, the silence that feels like it is suffocating you. Would you be brave enough to share just a small part of your journey? You can simply comment, "I sometimes question too," or "I understand this struggle." Your words, even anonymous ones, might be exactly what someone else needs to feel less alone in their darkest moment. I know this takes courage. I know some of you may need to use a different account or device. Your safety matters more than anything. But if you can, your comment might be the first time someone else feels truly understood. Now, let me continue with what happened next. Months passed in this double life. Outwardly obedient, inwardly transformed. I learned to smile when my husband insulted me. I learned to bow when his family demanded it. I learned to stay silent when they blamed me for things beyond my control. But inside, something was growing. Not bitterness, not hatred, but strength. The strength that comes from knowing you belong to something greater than yourself. The strength that comes from being loved by someone who sees your worth. The strength that comes from Jesus. Every morning, I would wake before dawn for Fajr prayer. I would perform wudu, washing my hands and face as I had done since childhood. I would cover my head and kneel on my prayer mat facing Mecca. But my heart was no longer there. My heart was with the man who saved me. I would mouth the Arabic prayers my family expected to hear through the walls. But in my mind, I was speaking to Jesus. I was thanking him for another day. I was asking him for protection. I was telling him I loved him. It was exhausting living two lives, pretending to be someone I was no longer, hiding the most important part of myself. But I had no choice. In Saudi Arabia, apostasy is punishable by death. Leaving Islam is not just a personal choice, it is a crime against the state, a betrayal of family, a rejection of everything our society is built upon. Women who convert to Christianity do not get trials. They do not get lawyers. They do not get second chances. They simply disappear. I heard stories of women who were found with Bibles and were never seen again. Women who spoke the name of Jesus and were locked away. Women who questioned Islam and were killed by their own brothers in the name of honor. I knew my fate would be the same if anyone discovered my secret. So I became an expert at deception. I quoted the Quran when my mother-in-law visited. I discussed Islamic teachings with other women at family gatherings. I nodded when the imam preached at Friday prayers. I wore my faith like a costume, carefully constructed, meticulously maintained. But underneath, I was someone else entirely. One night, I had another dream. I was back on the railway tracks, but this time, I was not alone. Jesus was standing beside me, not saving me from the train, just standing with me, his hand on my shoulder, his presence calm and steady. "Why did you save me?" I asked. "Because you are mine," he said, "and I do not abandon what is mine." I woke with tears on my face, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of something I had never felt before: belonging. For the first time in my life, I belonged. Not to a family, not to a husband, not to a kingdom, but to Christ. And no one could take that away from me. My husband grew more impatient. His family grew more demanding. The deadline they gave me was approaching. 1 year to conceive or be replaced. 1 year to prove my worth or disappear. But I was no longer afraid of disappearing, because I knew that even if they erased me from this earth, I would not be lost. Jesus had already found me, and he would never let me go. Then something happened that changed everything. One morning, I woke feeling different. Not sick, not weak, just different. A strange awareness in my body. A knowing. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling would not go away. A week passed. Then 2. I missed my cycle. I waited, afraid to hope, afraid to believe, afraid that this was another cruel trick of my body. But the signs continued. The exhaustion, the sensitivity, the quiet certainty growing inside me. I was pregnant. I did not tell anyone at first. I could not, because I did not know if this was a miracle or a tragedy. If I miscarried, they would blame me again. If I carried to term, they would take credit. If the child was a girl, I would still be worthless. If the child was a boy, he would belong to them, not me. But deep in my heart, I knew the truth. This child was not from my husband, not in the way they thought. This child was a gift. A gift from the God who saved my life. A gift from Jesus. When I finally told my husband, his reaction was not joy. It was suspicion. "How?" he asked. "After all this time, how?" The doctors confirmed it. Blood tests, ultrasounds, medical proof. I was carrying a child. The palace exploded with celebration. My mother-in-law wept with relief. My husband's family congratulated him. The shame was lifted. The mistake was redeemed. The worthless woman had finally proven her value. But I knew better. This child was not their victory. It was God's mercy. This child was not the result of their demands. It was the answer to my prayers. This child was not a product of duty. It was a gift of grace. As my belly grew, so did my faith. I read the story of Mary, a woman chosen by God, a woman who carried a miracle, a woman who said yes when the world said no. I was not Mary. I was not pure. I was not sinless. But I was chosen, and that was enough. The pregnancy was not easy. My body struggled. The doctors worried. My husband grew anxious. But every night I prayed, and every night I felt his presence. Jesus, protect this child. Jesus, give me strength. Jesus, do not let them take this gift from me. I would place my hand on my stomach and feel the baby kick. Each movement was a reminder that God sees, that God answers, that God does not forget his children. The women in my husband's family watched me constantly during those months. They examined everything I ate. They questioned every symptom. They measured my belly and calculated dates. They wanted to make sure this child was legitimate. They wanted to make sure I had not somehow deceived them. If they had known the truth, that this child was an answer to prayers I whispered to Jesus, they would have called me possessed. They would have called the baby cursed. They would have demanded I terminate the pregnancy, but they did not know, and I would never tell them. This secret was between me and God. The palace physicians monitored me weekly. They checked the baby's heartbeat. They measured growth rates. They performed ultrasounds. When they confirmed the baby was a boy, the entire family erupted in celebration. A son, an heir, a continuation of the bloodline. My husband looked at me differently after that news. Not with love, but with approval. I had finally done what was expected of me. I had finally fulfilled my purpose. But I knew the truth was deeper than they could imagine. At 7 months, I went into early labor. The doctors rushed me to the hospital. My husband paced the halls. His family gathered in the waiting room. I was alone in the delivery room, surrounded by strangers. The pain was unbearable. I screamed. I cried. I begged for relief. And then I heard his voice. Not audible, not out loud, but clear as if he were standing beside me. I am with you. Do not be afraid. The pain did not stop, but the fear did. I pushed with everything I had, and then I heard it. The most beautiful sound in the world. A baby crying. A son. I had given birth to a son. They placed him on my chest. Tiny. Perfect. Alive. I looked into his face and wept. Not because I had finally proven my worth to my husband. Not because I had saved myself from being replaced. But because I knew without a doubt, this child was a miracle. This child was proof that God had not forgotten me. This child was a sign that Jesus keeps his promises. My husband named him Abdullah, servant of God. He did not know how true that name was. He did not know that this child was born from prayers whispered in the dark. He did not know that this child was an answer from Jesus. But I knew, and that was enough. The palace celebrated for weeks. Gifts poured in from across the kingdom. My husband's family praised me. My mother-in-law called me blessed. My worth was restored. My place was secured. But I felt nothing, because I knew the truth. My worth had never been in my womb. My worth had always been in Christ. And no child, no matter how loved, could change that. As my son grew, I prayed over him every night. I whispered scriptures over his crib. I asked Jesus to protect him, to guide him, to one day reveal himself to my son the way he revealed himself to me. I did not know how. I did not know when, but I believed it would happen, because the same God who saved me on the railway tracks, the same God who gave me this child, the same God who never abandoned me, that God does not give up on the people he loves. Years passed. My son grew strong and healthy. My husband grew proud. The family grew satisfied. But my secret remained. At night, I still read my Bible. I still prayed to Jesus. I still carried his words in my heart. And I waited. Waited for the day when I could speak his name out loud. Waited for the day when I could tell my story. Waited for the day when I could be free. That day came sooner than I expected. When my son turned 5, my husband began to speak of sending me on a trip, a pilgrimage, a journey to reconnect with my faith. But I knew what he meant. He wanted me gone. Now that I had given him a son, I was no longer needed. I was a reminder of shame, a symbol of failure, an inconvenience. He had already taken a second wife, a younger woman, a woman who smiled at him the way I once did, a woman who did not carry the weight of almost being murdered. So he arranged for me to travel, to visit relatives, to spend time away from the palace. But I had other plans. I had been preparing for this moment for years, saving money, making contacts, learning about places where women like me could be safe, places where faith in Jesus was not a death sentence. I connected with underground networks of ex-Muslims, people who had escaped and were helping others do the same. We communicated through encrypted messages, through coded language, through channels that could not be traced. They told me what documents I needed, what routes were safest, what lies I needed to tell. They prepared me for every possibility, for every question, for every obstacle. I told no one, not my family, not my friends, not even the few people I trusted, because I knew if anyone found out, I would never leave. I would be locked in that palace forever. Or worse, I would end up back on those railway tracks. And this time, there would be no miracle. This time, Jesus would call me home. The night before my departure, I held my son while he slept. His small body curled against mine, his breath soft and steady, his hand clutching my finger even in sleep. I memorized every detail of his face, the curve of his cheek, the length of his eyelashes, the small birthmark near his ear. I kissed his forehead. I whispered a prayer over him. Jesus, protect him. Watch over him. One day, let him know the truth. Tears streamed down my face as I held him, because I knew this was goodbye. I knew I would never see him grow up, never see him become a man, never hear him call me mother again. But I also knew I could not stay. Staying meant living a lie. Staying meant denying the God who saved me. Staying meant teaching my son that truth should be hidden, and I could not do that. I could not teach him to be afraid of what is real. I left him a letter, hidden in a place only he would find when he was older, inside his favorite childhood book, the one I read to him every night, the one he would keep because it reminded him of me. A letter telling him the truth, that his mother loved him more than life itself, that she did not abandon him by choice, that she followed the only God who could truly save her, that Jesus was real, that his love was real, and that one day I prayed my son would know that love too. I wrote that I understood if he hated me, if he never forgave me, if he chose to forget I ever existed, but I wanted him to know why. I wanted him to understand that some truths are worth dying for, and some truths are worth living for. The next morning, I boarded the plane. My heart was breaking, but my spirit was free. I was leaving behind everything I had ever known. My family, my son, my title, my wealth, my country. But I was not losing anything, because I was gaining everything. Freedom, truth, life in Christ. I landed in a country where I could finally breathe, where I could speak his name without fear, where I could walk into a church and worship openly. The first time I entered a church, I wept. The first time I heard a congregation sing his name, I fell to my knees. The first time I took communion, I understood what it meant to be free. I was baptized 3 months later, in a small church, surrounded by strangers who became family. I went under the water as Princess Noor al-Hadid. I came up as a daughter of Christ. The old life was gone. The new life had begun. I will not lie to you. The pain of leaving my son never went away. Every day I think of him. Every night I pray for him. Every moment I wonder if he is safe, if he is loved, if he remembers me. There are mornings when I wake up and forget for a moment that he is not here. I reach for him before I remember, and the grief crashes over me again, fresh, raw, unbearable. But I know I made the right choice, because staying would have meant living a lie. Staying would have meant denying the God who saved me. Staying would have meant teaching my son that faith is something you hide. And I could not do that. I could not teach him to be afraid of the truth. The first year after leaving was the hardest. I jumped at every sound. I checked over my shoulder constantly. I feared that my husband would send someone to find me, to drag me back, to make me pay for my betrayal. I had nightmares about being tied to the tracks again. But this time, Jesus did not come. This time, the train did not stop. I would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, unable to breathe. But then I would remember where I was. In a country where I could speak his name. In a place where following Jesus was not a death sentence. In a home where I could worship freely. And the fear would fade. Not completely, but enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to keep believing. Enough to keep trusting that God had a purpose for my pain. So I left, and I trusted Jesus with the rest. Today, I live in freedom. I work with other women who have escaped. Women who left everything to follow Christ. Women who know what it costs to say his name. We share our stories. We pray together. We remind each other that we are not alone. Some of these women lost children too. Some lost parents. Some lost siblings who swore to kill them if they ever returned. We carry these losses like scars, permanent, painful, but also proof that we survived. I have learned something in these years of freedom. Jesus does not promise that following him will be easy. He does not promise that faith will be comfortable. He does not promise that we will not suffer. But he promises something better. He promises that we will never be alone. He promises that our suffering has purpose. He promises that this life is not the end. And he promises that those who lose everything for his sake will gain everything in eternity. I lost my son. I lost my family. I lost my country. I lost my wealth. I lost my title. I lost everything the world told me mattered. But I gained Jesus. And he is worth it all. Every tear. Every sacrifice. Every painful goodbye. He is worth it. I wish I could tell you that my story has a happy ending. I wish I could tell you that my son found my letter and came looking for me. I wish I could tell you that my family forgave me and accepted my faith. But that has not happened. Not yet. Maybe it never will. But that does not change the truth. Jesus saved me. He literally stepped between me and death. He gave me a son when everyone said I was cursed. He protected me when I was surrounded by enemies. He guided me to freedom when escape seemed impossible, and he has been with me every single day since. That is my happy ending. Not a fairy tale, not a perfect life, but a real relationship with a real God who really loves me. And that is more than enough. If this testimony touched your heart in any way, please know you are not alone in your questions or struggles. Many of us have walked this difficult path before you. By subscribing to this channel, you will join a community of seekers and believers who understand the unique challenges you face. Each week, we share new stories of hope and freedom, testimonies of those who found light in their darkest moments. We respect your journey and your privacy completely. Whether you are just curious, questioning your faith, or already on your path to Christ, this space is for you. Subscribe by clicking below, and you will receive these powerful stories directly as we publish them. No judgment, no pressure, just authentic testimonies that might speak to the very questions you have been carrying silently in your heart. Remember, the same Jesus who found me on those railway tracks can find you too. You do not have to walk this path alone. Join us, and let us discover truth together. I do not know what your story is. I do not know what you are facing right now, but I know this. If you are listening to my testimony, it is not by accident. God sees you, Jesus knows your name, and he is calling you, not to a religion, not to rules, not to rituals, but to himself, to a relationship, to freedom, to life. I was tied to railway tracks and left to die, but Jesus stepped between me and death. I was called worthless by everyone who knew me, but Jesus called me his. I was trapped in a palace of fear, but Jesus set me free. And he can do the same for you. Whatever you are facing, whatever you are running from, whatever you are afraid of, he is bigger, he is stronger, he is enough. All you have to do is call his name, Jesus. That is all it takes. One word, one prayer, one moment of surrender, and everything changes. I am living proof. My name is Princess Noor al-Hadid. I was a royal woman in Saudi Arabia. I was barren. I was condemned. I was left to die. But Jesus saved me. And if he saved me, he can save you too.